event. We're so honored to have Missouri's 55th governor, Governor Jay Nixon, join us tonight to sit down and just talk about, how awesome he did at not only preserving our state parks, our natural resources, our conservation, but what his term was like in office. So again, we're just grateful for him to sit down and have a good visit tonight. And so we got some, some questions we're going to throw at you, Governor. And just want to, again, thank you from the bottom of our heart for joining us tonight. And you and Georgianne were just great citizens and stewards of Missouri. So thank you for joining us. And we'll get right into the questions.
Our way. It's wonderful to be with you, and thanks for all that you guys do and all of the affiliates and all of the work you do to protect our resources and to get people outside. It's a wonderful, inspirational group.
Thank you. Before we get into some of these things, I think, what have you and Georgianne been up to since you left office? Let's start there.
Well, we've got what we call our 30-30-30 plan. It was 30 when we got married, 30 years of public service, and 30 years of something else. So now we're in the something else part. I'm practicing law. I'm teaching law school at WashU Law School also, and she and I are doing a fair amount of traveling. We're doing some trekking. We did a 110-mile trek in England here. Before that, we did up and down the Grand Canyon. This year, we were out at Glacier National Park. So we've been getting around to a lot of places that for a number of years we didn't get a chance to do it. We're living here in University City, really enjoying it. I can walk to work. And it's just been a good transition, and it's nice to have an election day coming up in which my name's not on the ballot.
That's good. So let's start at the beginning. What how did you get started in interest in the outdoors, and how walk us through some of the early years of your life?
Well, as folks may know, I'm from a small town. We're born and raised in DeSoto. My dad was raised in Hematite, which is just up the creek from there. And DeSoto's a town with the Joachim Creek running through it. The big river comes in there. And from the time I can always remember, if it came to be the weekends, we were out on something. We did a lot of floating at Washington State Park. Both my sister and I worked there. Joachim Creek, one of the things I'm most proud of is my father, when he was mayor, one of the very first clean water grants in the country came to DeSoto to build a sewage treatment plant to clean that stream up, so that by the time I was in high school, we were keeping the fish and eating the fish we were catching right there in DeSoto. Then as I got a little older, Boy Scouts were very much out. We were outdoors. One of the requirements of our troop was that we had to camp for at least one weekend a month, and we did that at least. So we were outside quite a bit, and our family liked to go to parks. We were a little like the Griswolds, traveling around the country sometimes as we go north or east or south or west. I believe I was in all 48 of the lower states before my 18th birthday.
That's cool. What are some of your fondest memories of growing up and those childhood memories?
Well, I mean, the things that I really enjoyed was to be out in the quiet of the wilderness and the woods. I mean, Georgianne's the same way. She had a place behind her house that she would hike down to, and a little kind of camp there. We just really, we had a wood fireplace in our home, and my job from as long as I can remember, it was, I hauled wood for a while, but then I started cutting and chopping it after that, which the football coach liked ultimately, but it was a lot of work. So we were just one of those families that did that. And I was lucky enough then to get opportunities with our family. I mean, as we look forward now, I mean, we'll talk about Tom Nixon, my dad's brother, who's an unbelievable positive spirit and help on fly fishing. My sister's now a game warden in Texas, and she's a very good horse person. She won a few years ago the Texas Women's Law Enforcement Shooting Championship. So I'm the only guy in America that did two things with his sister. One, I got her a gun rack for a pickup truck for her 30th birthday, and number two, she can outshoot me. So when your little sister's a better shot than you, it's not that I guess it's out of the bag now. But so she and I would go out and do a lot of things. My older sister was more of a musician. She was a piano player and went to college on a Boy Scholarship. But my little sister and then to walk to school from our house, you had to go through a park. And I remember like yesterday, I made one of those rabbit traps, the ones that you put the stuff in it and it comes in and then the wooden thing falls down and the rabbit is stuck there. So I set it up, walked to school. When I came back and Mason left, it was down, but unfortunately it was a squirrel and not a rabbit. And so I said, what do I do with it? And my dad said, well, you go to the garage, you get a baseball bat, you leave one window open, and you pull that up, and then when it gets out, you try to kill it with the baseball bat. That obviously did not go well. And if you want to know why I spent a lot of time outside, it was about the third thing I hit when my mom came in there that made it very, very sure that I wasn't going to spend much time inside our house doing anything like that ever again in my life.
Yeah.
They're hard to hit, I'll tell you that. I got a little fur on the tail on one of them.
That's good. Now you mentioned fly rotting. We all know you're an excellent fly rotter. So tell us how did that come to be?
Well, my dad has had 3 brothers, and we began these summer trips where the fathers and their sons would go out and fish. We ended up focusing in on the White River down in Arkansas. There was an island that we could float down to and camp for a week there. Nobody would bother us in the middle of the stream. So we started doing that. My dad at that time was a spin caster. His brother, Tom Nixon, had begun significantly seriously bass fishing down in Louisiana with a fly rod. And so he took it upon himself to teach us. And so literally before and after the evenings, we'd go out behind on a gravel bar. We'd have targets. We cast to them. They would tell us what was going right and what was going wrong. But I just followed Tom Nixon around. And ultimately, then my father got really into fly fishing in saltwater, which is, you have to make some long casts. So I've caught bonefish and all that sort of stuff, but the casts are really long. And that was very, very helpful also. So I think my uncle was the inspiration, and we just kept it up. Plus one of our favorite parks is both Montauk and Bennett. I mean, it was an easy place to learn, especially the dry flies, because the stream is relatively small, so you can make mistakes early on. So I really recommend as people begin fly fishing, they take some of these smaller streams. We used to fish on the Joachim, the big with a fly rod too, so you can control it more rather than getting on these big western streams where you got to throw the fly 60, 70, 80, 90 feet to start out with.
That's cool. Now, your Uncle Tom, he was, kind of a world-renowned fly fisher. He had a book and different stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, Tom Nixon is as good a fisherman as I've been near. He was an engineer by trade, and worked in Louisiana, and so he fished for bass and panfish. Wrote three different books on how to tie flies for bass, and then he invented some flies. The 56er, which is still used on the White River. It's a weighted nymph that kind of looks like a crawdad a little bit. We caught a lot of fish on it, but we started using heavier line down there. The bottom line is that he wrote. And he was really, really funny too. And plus, he fished every day. Tom Nixon fished when he retired. He moved to Warrensburg because that was where his wife was from, Warrensburg, Missouri, and he fished at Truman Lake every day. And so to make it easier to get his boat off, he had a series of wing nuts that just screwed the boat on top of his truck. And so he'd be going down the road and was stopped numerous times by the cops because they thought he had done anything to hook his boat on. He had to explain to all the local cops how there was a screw that held it on. But Tom was funny and capable, and was not a big. He was also relatively disdainful of people keeping fish. He used to call it, if you bring fish home, he'd call you a meat fisherman. But he would eat it. But he was rather disdainful of us if that's the reason that we went fishing to catch fish and to fool fish, not just to eat fish.
That's good stuff. Good story. You mentioned state parks and our wonderful trout parks and stuff, and as during your leadership, you traveled to each one of those state parks, and it was when I was worked for state parks and under Bill Bryan's leadership, and so tell us about traveling to each one of those parks and historic sites, because I think that is so cool, that story of how you traveled to those. And I remember that year that you did that, but what were some of the cool memories and things that you have from our state park system?
Well, I'm a little OCD, as people know anyway, so I start counting stuff. So once I said I would do it, I kind of had to do it. But it was wonderful. I mean, we were trying at the time, what we were doing is we were trying to establish what we were calling the 2020 plan, which was a goal of getting 20 million people to come to our state parks, 20 million, and then raise $20 million from folks that were there, not by charging, it's free to get to parks. But we did a series of things to try to be just a little bit more entrepreneurial, have maps or color, and you could pay a couple of dollars for, and things of that nature. And once we got into that, and then we began to get into some competitions, and over the years, that year we were really working hard to try to get into the finals for the best park system in the country, which we did. You know, the Florida having an ocean gives them an advantage. Okay, they just got, we don't have any like big beaches or no place to surf really well in Missouri, so losing to Florida didn't make us feel all that bad. But we were trying to really work that, and then we got the benefit of that. Then the next year we're awarded the best camping state in the country, and then the year after that the best trail state, which is really a thing that excited me, because all the work that's been done, not just at the state park level, but in local parks, county parks, communities, it really got me on the trail part of the world. And quite frankly, the class I teach, I'll be teaching again this year at WashU, concerns the law behind the Rails to Trails Act. What I'm trying to do is arm these students with the capacity to be involved in those rail to trails conversions as they go back to their home communities all across America. And we're looking for projects around the country where the folks in my class can be helpful to people. So the trail part of it was really proud of that. But I think that the 88 parks, as far as my impression for it, I found a lot of parks and discovered a lot of parks that I got to visit later that I didn't really even know about. I mean, for example, Wallace State Park in northwest Missouri, a beautiful camping park. I'd never been to Sam A. Baker, even though it was just south of where I lived a few hours, and I didn't really realize what an excellent place that was. Trail of Tears, I think one of the most underrated parks going is Trail of Tears, and the history involved there, plus the one side of the park really high, the other low. So it was good to see all of the various parks, and then to interact directly with the park staff there, with the superintendents and the other folks who were just so helpful. It was the only bad part about going to all the parks. It was hard to keep on schedule, because every time I'd go there, they were explaining stuff to me, and you know me, I'd be asking questions. And all that sort of stuff. But it also put in my head that if we had other resources, we could add to the park system. And that's why it gave me, I think, a knowledge, and Bill and a lot of others, you and others, the sense of what are there gaps in our parks? What areas do we need to have more land? Because as you well know, when I was Attorney General, we settled that case in bankruptcy court with the Sarco, and we had over $20 million, we had $26 million to fix up, it was the legacy of lead. So we had $50 million, half of it spent to fix up sites, the other half to buy property to replace the sites that had been damaged, as a co-trustee with the Department of Interior. So I went and met with Sally Jewell in DC twice and convinced her what we needed to do, and built a sewage treatment plant there at Montauk to make sure the current was protected for them as a deal. But that gave me the chance to see that a park like Bryant Creek needed to be added to the system, because you had the whole area down by Marshville that just didn't have as many state park resources. And when that park is open, and it's getting closer and closer every day, I really highly recommend. The first few people that fish there are going to catch a lot of fish. I don't know after that, but the cliffs in there are absolutely beautiful. So we had that park. We went to Branson, the land that we bought right next to the Henninger conservation site there. It gives us almost 3,500 acres, and a shout out to a Missouri family that owned that property, that put it for sale, and once they learned that we were buying it, they made a very, very, very reasonable offer. Took their price down because they knew what the state was going to use it for, and we saved a whole bunch of money in doing that. So I think I got not only the benefit of seeing all the parks, but seeing the gaps. And that was one of the inspirations. We'll talk a couple of minutes, I think, about Echo Bluff, but we just didn't have a park that accessed all those springs as well. Montauk was focused for trout fishing. Current River has been difficult to develop because of the setback there. And I think that it gave me a chance to see that. Plus some of the parks that are, the huge trees down the Boot Heel, my golly. Those things, and then the ice storm got a bunch of them. But until you've seen a persimmon tree that's like 180 feet tall, and two people can't get their hands around a persimmon tree. Where I'm from in Jefferson County, persimmon trees about this big around, and you go get them. So some of that sort of stuff just surprised me. And then the other thing about it, and this will sound odd, but in the lead area down in St. Francis County there, we've got a great outdoor park. With those lead tailings where folks can ride motorcycles and ATVs and all that sort of stuff that draws folks from all over the Midwest. And so combining the recreation parts of parks as well as in the historic sites it gave me a much better feel for the mixture of assets we had, and kind of inspired us to do even more. And that's why we included parks in the bond issue, why we put this other resources in. Plus, people love parks, and it's fun. You know, it was fun. You know, going to, everybody here would like, everybody on this call would like to go to every park. And if you had the highway patrol flying you and driving you, it's a lot easier.
We do have a great park system. I mean, having worked there and seeing so many of them too, but the diversity that we have in our parks, and you know, the trout parks, what's in North Missouri is down in the Ozarks, just totally different. And you know, the fishing opportunities and
I'll tell you, an underrated park, Tyler, is Prairie. It's in the far southwest part of the state, but my golly, for people that haven't been to that park, especially during spring flowers or when we're rounding up the buffalo, which they say they can jump 10 feet. I don't know that they can vertical. I've never seen that, but they don't look like like somebody. As a guy that tried to play basketball and tried to jump, the fact that a buffalo could outjump me by 9.5 feet is somewhat intimidating. But that park is absolutely pristine when you get it in the spring and the flowers come up, and it's a long way from folks, but clearly worth seeing if you want to spend an afternoon looking at that. I think Onondaga and Merrimack State Park and you go to if you're at Merrimack State Park, going to that old CCC portion that they have in the lodge there that goes back into history, you know, down at, another one for me is, you know, I'd been there, but never really studied it, was Roaring River. I had not hiked much of that. We were able to get that fire trail over the top, and we bought some property that's able to protect the watershed there, kind of like the 71 acres we bought above the spring at Bennett, just to make sure that land could stay there in conservation and keep that pristine spring clean. That's the other thing. So I saw the multiple purposes of parks. You had historic sites, you had places to recreate, you had places and then you had some places you're just going to save. And the other thing I loved about our parks is that the biological and the plant and animal people in parks, I just find it fascinating. The Bryant Creek, I've looked at some of the stuff there about all the species that are in that area. And then we have Don Robinson right in Jefferson County. That's also in this. Another great park. If you haven't been to it, you're coming to St. Louis. Eureka's an easy place to go. The first half mile is paved of the trails because we want to make sure it was folks with disabilities could do that. But once you get past that and get into those sandstone cliffs down in there, it's really amazing to see. But I would tell us, it's fellow Jefferson County, and I would tell people, I'll get in trouble from parks, but I would not be visiting that park if you weren't wearing Hunter's Orange from November 14th to November 23rd or 24th, whatever it is this year. There's some deer down there. They're unbelievable. Some of my friends in Jeff County, I mean, you know, they watch those things.
That's funny. So if you had, I don't want to put you on the spot and tell me your favorite park, but you can if you want to. But what are your top three? Maybe your top one trout fishing park and a couple others if you had.
Yeah, I mean, we went to Montauk, although I think the water at Bennett's a little longer, a little easier to come at for what I was trying to do. But Montauk State Park was always the place. You have the spring there, you have hiking. It was close to 2 hours to get there. That's where we go for opening day most of the time. So I'm a real devotee of that park. It's hard not to say no to the Katy Trail. You know, when I was in the state Senate, we passed that by one vote, and I might have been that one vote. And then as governor, we got when the Ameren problem happened down at Johnson Shut-ins in the settlement of that litigation, we were able to get the mileage from Windsor to Pleasant Hill to take the Katy Trail all the way across the state. And then in my last week as governor, we were able to formalize and get the Rock Island line part of it. So the Katy Trail is one of those parks that is pretty special when you think about where it stands for the country and the world, quite frankly.
Yeah, couldn't agree.
Those are some of my, and I you know, like I said, that they're so different. And I worked at Washington State Park, and so I spent a lot of time down there. Know those trails pretty well. But lots of good places. But the trout parks and Katy Trail State Park are probably as good as any. But I would recommend Sam A. Baker for those folks that haven't been down to that part of the state.
For sure. So you mentioned Echo Bluff earlier, and I think that's the one I really want to spend some time in and visit about. You know, totally from the sale, the acquisition, the building, all the way up until that day on July 30th when we were both standing in front of the Betty Lee Lodge and cut that ribbon, and I went and pulled my my plaque that, from that dedication, from that day. And I have those memories, and everybody else, that worked at parks and saw all that culmination. But just start at the beginning and talk. I mean, Echo Bluff is just such an amazing place that so many people love it. I mean, I don't know. We just all have our own fond memories, and if you haven't visited that one, I think that's one certainly on the top of my list. But let's hear it from your perspective on how that park came to be so quickly and amazingly. That thing got built.
Well, first of all, we had the resources come available in this settlement, and you had the end of my term coming in just a few years, so we put the pedal on it. I'll tell you that. And I want to tell all Missourians and all members here, yes, resources were spent there, but there's not a penny of debt on that park. And its first year of operation had 499,000 visitors. Okay? So that's the end of the story. The front of the story is we always knew that this was an interesting area. J.C. Kushner kept talking to me about this bluff he'd walked down and looked at down there. And so I traipsed down there before we bought it. I don't want to admit that to too many people, but I wanted to look at it. And I just I thought that we could build something there that put us at another level as far as some of the accommodations. We thought it could be a place that you would have retreats and things of that sort. But I was drawn to the property for three reasons. First of all, it became available because the guy that owned it ended up getting a felony conviction, federally drug conviction, and then the property had to be sold. So it was going to be sold at the courthouse steps. So we set up a way in which we had a straw party buying it. We ended up making the bid from the basement of the Capitol. I was down there watching the bidding and authorizing it. We bought it for far cheaper than where we could have gone. I don't tell the owners that now. It's a little late, but and it's not like we got caught in an auction and wasted a bunch of money. It was underneath our number, but we were going to get it, and we did. It used to be a Camp Zoe, after a bunch of years ago, and my mom was a counselor there. And I didn't even know that until after we purchased the property, as far as Camp Zoe. And so anybody out there has a picture of my mom there. My sister has all the pictures, and her house burned down about 15 years ago, and we lost all our family pictures of my mom. But if anybody has a picture of my mom as a counselor there. So I knew the area, and what we were trying to do is get this jumping off spot that could be seen from the entire Midwest, that would service not only the Current River and the Jacks Fork, and also the Trout Park, but it touches the Roger Pryor backcountry. So you have over 50,000 acres that touches a state park to be used for outdoor conservation, hiking, hunting, all the things that you really want to do. And to think you have that asset right next to you. So we were working with the LAD Foundation to make sure we had a good cooperative relationship with them to make that available. So it made it a place that just needed to be done. So once we bought the property, we had to make a lot of changes. And I want to thank a number of people that were helpful. Folks like Johnny Morris came up and walked through it one day just to give us a sense of what it would look like. Chuck Drury was helpful in looking at the area. Peter Hershen talked about some of the business things behind it. If you're going to spend that kind of money and have a park, what you need to do to make sure you've got enough visitors there. And so the highway department, there was a really bad bridge down there. We wanted to trade it and build some things there. So we were bringing all the resources to bear that we possibly could to get that done on a time frame that was the right thing. But I always felt that region, I hate to go through the spring so much, but in the 70s when the Scenic River was formed, the National Park Zone, we gave up to them. I wasn't there, and I'm not saying we gave up. I mean, it's still in public land. Big Spring, Round Spring, Alley Spring, Blue Spring, and they're all really close there. You have 6 springs within 30 minutes. We get used to them in Missouri. If you come from another state and you say that water just comes up out of the ground, people think they're watching an old Beverly Hillbillies or something, and they shot it and the oil's coming up. The people in other parts of the country just don't really realize what those Ozark Springs are. Quite frankly, some Missourians don't. You get millions of gallons coming out. So we really wanted to get that area, have a significant print there, and then I wanted to give everybody a chance to be really proud of a development. I'm exceptionally proud of Echo Bluff. I feel like it's one of those places that will stand the test of time. The other thing about Echo Bluff, if you take a shower there, you can be 6'5" and still not hit your head in the shower. I put the shower 6 inches higher because I'm relatively tall, and I got sick and tired of hitting my heads on the showers at state parks. So the shower are taller, and all the art down there from conservation, Knapp and some of the others did a lot of great photography that we then used there. If you look at some of those photography work down there in those cabins and those lodges, it was stuff done by conservation and DNR over the years. Just some amazing things. And once everybody kind of got into it, we got it done. The other thing down there, we were trying to get kids. So that's the thing about another reason I'm so interested in Sinking Creek is that Sinking Creek, while an Ozark little stream that runs right by the lodge there, it comes down the hills far enough so it's warmed up a little bit so your kids can get in there and they don't turn blue. Some of those places down there, it's just the streams are so cold. So it's a great place for kids from the city to have their first chance to walk out in a stream, to lay down in it, to see the things. So we thought it was a perfect place for that. And then we put folks like you and everybody else just put the pedal to the metal and did the best we could. I want to thank all the contractors. I want to thank State Parks for all the work they did, OA. But it was a very, very proud day. We opened that. And for those who don't know, Betty Lee Lodge, Betty Lee Wilson Nixon is my mom. And to get into the park, you cross Wheeler Bridge, which is Georgianne Wheeler Nixon. So that's the only and then the conference room there is one named after my dad and one after hers. So I did do that. What the heck? But my mom would be very proud to have her name. She was a big archer, loved the outdoors, but was especially proud of that.
As you should have been. That whole project is just amazing. The launching pad, that word that you use, there's just so much recreational opportunities down there, and such a wonderful shot in the arm for the economy down there. And just the
other thing we kept, Tyler, we kept going on that one too, because we made a trade with conservation to get the fire tower. Since we built the lodge down low, we want to have, and they haven't fully developed the ability to get to that tower yet, but they will. And when you get up to that fire tower that looks above it, you can see, New York one way and Arizona the other, darn near. It feels like it. But conservation was very helpful because we wanted that property. We ended up trading them for some property in Franklin County, and we got that. So there's a lot of opportunity. And as you go forward 30, 40, 50 years from now, if the demand is still there, we've laid out where you could put other cabins up on top of the hill on out from where the overlook is. So that's a park that not only was designed to be good when it opened, but also could expand if necessary, if the demand increases. I'm real proud of both the design and the people at State Parks just did an unbelievable job. But to give people a sense of it, the first day we went down there to clean that up, the majority of the time was spent picking up needles and drug paraphernalia. And to think you go from needles, drug paraphernalia, and meth to one of the great parks of the Midwest is just a really good over-under. It's a good Missouri example of what you can do if people work together.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you talked about like the layout of things. That lodge is exactly where it needs to be because of the views and all that stuff. So, and I know you were in on some of that stuff, which I think is just so cool because there was just so much detail and thought out, and if you go down by the Echo Bluff, you can turn away from somebody and be talking in a normal voice and they can hear you. The bluff itself is just so cool. The warm water spring, you just nailed it right there with the opportunity for kids to go swim in a warm water creek, in the summer. There's just so many cool features of that park.
You get the fire ring there. And the other thing, if people think in the spring that stream comes up, but we're far enough back from it. I guarantee you, the lodge is never gonna be swept under that way. But no, it's been well. And the other thing about it, for those folks that like to look up into the sky, the lighting there was all designed to be down and low. So at night, the stars down there, for those that get light pollution up here in the cities where I'm living now, it's just really, really nice down there because of the way that lighting was designed to be as muted and down and away from the sky as possible. So things like that at the design feature have made a significant difference.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to transition a little bit because this has been a fun time. I want to transition into conservation a little bit and some hunting stories and things like that, because we are truly blessed with a diverse state of, the opportunities with the conservation department and things too. So, what are some of your favorite conservation areas that are out there in Missouri? And I know you went to almost every one of those too when you were in office.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of conservation places. I mean, obviously I'll say a weird one here. Valley View Glades in Jefferson County was right down from where I was living at the time when Georgianne came over. And while I didn't ask her to marry me there, it was one of the alluring things. She thought that Jefferson County was full of glades, and always a very special place for us. I like Three Creeks in Boone County. I think that's a really neat place where you can hike, and the turf moves up and down there. Once again, the Hennigan and Branson, that piece of property, that 1,300 acres that touches our state parks is pretty cool. The Busch Wildlife Center we use now a lot. I mean, in that sense, it's a great place if my sons are in town, we'll go out there, get a boat, and go fish. You can sight your rifles in there. It's real close here. So I think those sorts of places have been really good for us. Binder Lake in Jeff City is a good place. The cross country team always ran around that, so I had to pick my sons up there. So I would fish a little while they would run laps around the lake, which fishing was more fun, I think.
That's cool. We're just so blessed with so many opportunities. I mean, I'm just amazed that places that you go and see are just hidden gems across Missouri. We got so many of them. We're so blessed, really.
The other thing, people support them. I mean, I don't think we can forget that in the last general election, when we had the re-upping of the parks and the soil and water conservation, which is a genius thing to mix those two together, as absolute genius, that passed with 81% of the vote. 81% of Missourians said, I want to continue to pay taxes to make sure I support my parks and the outdoors. So if any of these folks that are in office doubt what Missourians feel, I think that vote that day showed once again how clearly this is not a position Missourians have, it's a value we share.
Boy, isn't it? And I was at Echo Bluff State Park that night, and we're with our team, and we're seeing those numbers come in, and just mind-blowing to the support that Missourians have. And and when I travel around the nation, and anybody else too, I mean, you see this, like Missouri is so lucky to have those dedicated sales taxes, and protecting them is so important that what we do.
Parks and conservation, I mean, that independent funding source gives them the power to do good and to think long-term. Parks and conservation cannot be a 1 year at a time deal. That's why some of the folks are talking about this, and we may talk about the 11-point thing. Okay, so we got to keep 625 acres quiet for a while. Okay, how about 50 years? It's not by a beautiful stream. Fine, parks will do that. Preserving what we have for future generations, making a gift to the future is what we do in these areas. And I think Missourians support that. And I think when we get near the end, I do think the one takeaway for this year, for all of us that go outdoors, is we've been joined by a whole lot of people because of COVID. Parks are overrun. I mean, when Georgianne and I went down 8 or 9 weeks ago to hike at Hahn State Park, we thought we were leaving plenty early. We get down there about 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and we couldn't get in the park because there was too many people. Now I know where some other trails are around there. We went to them, and somebody said, "Were you upset?" I said, "No, I'm happy." That's it's our property, it's our parks. People are using them. So I think this is a time in which I think all of us that are active in these movements need to really think about how do we engage other neighbors and others to see these parks. People come up to me all the time. They don't know the things that we know, and we tend to be a somewhat of a groupish people. So I just ask everybody in Conservation Federation to make sure not only you're asking kids, but all adults. Tell them where parks are, tell them where places to hike and fish are. Be amazed how many people now have a desire, rather than going inside and sitting in a room with 20 people and worrying whether somebody's going to breathe on them. How about go outside and sit with 19 fish and try to catch a couple of them? And I think that the parks are going to be of great benefit as we move forward for the independent outdoor activities.
You're right. Couldn't be so right. And you mentioned 11 Point State Park, so what's your take on preserving that important property that
Real simple. I mean, that was we're really, really proud of that 4,000 acres we were able to get down there very cost effectively. Some people may know that, in my view, the court made a mistake down there and ruled that the state has to sell 625 acres, saying because there's a conservation easement on it, it can't be a park. I think that's absurd legally. General Schmidt and his team from the Attorney General's office are appealing that, and I'm working with a group of people to put what's called an amicus brief, or a friend of the court brief, for conservation in there. I know, Tyler, I've talked to you and some of the members. I think we're going to have a unanimity of folks saying, let's preserve this. Let's protect parks' ability to buy property, to hold, to turn into parks. And so we're working on that. But I think the court is wrong. And I think that land right down the stream is some of the best stuff we've got in the state. I think 11 Point hugely, like I say, it's a long way from St. Louis, a long way from a lot of places, but it is a beautiful stream. And if the punishment we have to pay, because why we bought that is that people are required to float in that stream for 7 miles without getting out on one side of it, we'll take that for the next 100 years.
You couldn't be more right. And that's what it's all about, is, future generations that aren't even born yet, certainly. Well, we're getting a little short on time, but I've got a couple questions that, I really want to pose to you. And it's pretty simple. The first one is, what's your greatest hope for Missouri and the outdoors and conservation and natural resources?
I really do believe that the reemergence of things like elk and repopulating them at Peck's Ranch, expanding the Katy Trail. The thing I want people to think is that we can make our system better. Even though our park system and our conservation department are great, the only way that they don't stay the best is if we lose focus on making sure that they are. And so I'd ask a lot of people to continue to take outdoor professional careers. I mean, these are some challenging jobs, difficult jobs, a lot of travel, don't pay that much. So one of the things I want to make sure is our universities and schools stacked. That's one of the reasons we did the State Park Youth Corps with those young kids. We put 5,000 kids to work in the parks wearing DeSoto Dragon green t-shirts, but getting those kids out there, I mean, that's good. So I'm very positive in the future, getting kids out, getting them off their phones, getting them outside, and then making sure people understand the long pull, and then the connection between then every day we talk about parks, people just need to understand they own them. They're the public's. They're not state parks. They're not conservations. They're ours. And so continuing to do that, but just getting people outside, I think, is extremely important. Georgianne was real involved in the Youth and Nature Initiative, trying to get high school teachers to teach outside in biology and things like that. We just all got to keep working, because these days, so much of people's time is spent looking at their phones or sitting inside and doing things. But I am extremely optimistic. I think, as I said before, I think outdoors is a value in Missouri, and I think it's a strong value.
Well, it's a good point. And, you did leave, you and Georgianne left such an important legacy into parks and the outdoors, the youth corps. I mean, you changed. I saw kids' lives change because of that program. And so it's just, I guess the last question is, why us? And when I say us, conservation, natural resources, state park, as governor of this state, you could have left your legacy as anything, but you invested so much time, money, energy, and resources, and we are so appreciative. Why did you choose doing that in your legacy in Missouri?
Well, I'll go the light reason first, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's fun. I mean, the parks are fun, being outside's fun. The people that work in that area are fun. They come to the job every day wanting to do things and get out, and they're not afraid to do things. It's just great. So I enjoyed being around the people. I enjoyed being around people when they're outside. But ultimately, when I was reelected in our transition team, our internal transition, our theme was we wanted to do things for people that would never know our name. We wanted to do things that would be lasting, that it wasn't important for them to know that Jay Nixon or the Nixon administration or this senator or that senator did it, but it was something that 30, 40 years from now would be there. And when it comes to doing things that are going to be lasting, giving the public additional property, taking those assets and respecting them, and then getting people out there. And once again, the 2020 plan, we had gone down to 12 or 13 million visitors. I mean, we've been over 20 every year since, I think. I haven't checked this year yet. And I'm not I don't look at it every day. Bill I drive him nuts. I mean, he'd have to come to meetings and I'd say, how many today? What, and all that sort of stuff. But I do think that parks are a big part of what we are. I mean, when you look, and I'm sorry to be so long here, but east of us, land is just hard to keep in public hands. When you think about Illinois, Ohio, it's just too many people. And then you go west of us, and once you get through Kansas, there's some interesting states, but it's pretty flat land. I mean, this is a place that has the physical plant, the diverse physical plant, to be a great park area. And I thought that any investments that we made, and then the economic part of it, this stuff generates a huge amount of resources for our state and for small businesses all over the place. I mean, you know as well as I do, the sales tax numbers in Adair County by Kirksville, they do more sales tax in the first month of gun deer season than they do for Christmas. Okay, this outdoor is really good for the economy, and billions of dollars is spent in a positive way in our state. So we saw a great economic benefit. In fact, I was asked to make a presentation and did, went to the Western governors and made a significant presentation about that tying of the economics to the outdoor, so that even if folks that didn't get out, you could prove to them that outdoors was a good money generator for the state also. So we had that, and then, like I say, I spent a lot of time. The last piece, that Big River, we shared football seats with the St. Louis Cardinals, with the family that did TIF mining, barite mining. And if you probably won't recall before you were born, a settling pond burst there, and about 15 miles of the Big River was completely wiped out. The silt went through it. Just temporarily, it made it so that things couldn't grow and all the fish died. That man worked the rest of his life before he died to do everything he could within his power to rebuild the stream he had fished on his entire life. And if you go now and you go down to the Big River, you wouldn't even know that's there. The earth will reclaim for good if we let it do it. We have to not mess it up. And so the last part is, there are some times in which the best public policy is to hold something and do nothing with it, except look at it and protect it. And parks do that for us, for our kids and grandkids, for the future. And I think that's the kind of investment you can make in a public service career that will pay off for people that won't know your name, but that will get great benefit from it.
You couldn't be more right. But, I mean, all I can say is thank you. From the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of our membership, our board of directors, thank you for all your public service and what you've done for Missouri in the outdoors, because it's we have such a legacy here that you and Georgianne worked so hard at, and we're going to do everything we can that can continue to protect it for future generations. So again, from the bottom of my heart, just thank you so much, and appreciate you joining us tonight.
I should have worn my deer are not livestock t-shirt tonight, but I didn't. I just let that, we won't even go through that. We let deer continue to be livestock. You know, we were able to get that done. I want to thank everybody for helping us on that veto override. It was the right thing to do to hold that veto. But I want to thank the Federation. You all and your members have been incredibly generous and helpful of your time and resources and friendship for so many years, opening up homes and property. And we started the governor's turkey hunt, and people opened up their property to teach these kids and turkey hunt. We started the governor's deer hunt for a while, where we were teaching folks how to properly use weapons and how to be good sportsmen with them. All of that help wouldn't have happened but for your members reaching out of their own time helping us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, because it takes volunteers and takes everybody to make it all happen. And that's the beauty of the Federation. We bring all those partners together and make things happen. So thank you, Governor. Really appreciate your time, and appreciate everything you've done for us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Talk to you guys later.
All righty.